On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, Chicago Schützen season is in. A Valmet missing a bolt? The NASCAR CEO was busted drunk and with Oxy, and why I think 3D guns are bullshit.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Marky and Freeze, and this is episode 104 of the John 1911 podcast. How was your night, Freeze?
Not bad.
Better than the people in Chicago?
A lot better than the people in Chicago.
We were just talking for a minute off pod, and I actually haven't seen the news. I've had about 2 hours of sleep. I had a pretty rough night, but you were saying, quote, the powers that be in Chicago are calling for Donald Trump's help. What's going on? What's going on?
Well, over this past weekend, I think it's like 72 people were shot in Chicago. I don't know, 10 or 11 of them died.
72?
It's not even a holiday weekend. It was apparently what the gangbangers are doing in Chicago is they're just randomly finding crowds of people and firing into them.
Really?
Yeah. And everyone's trying to crucify Emmanuel, which, deservedly so. But
isn't hard to do.
Yeah. And there's even, I've heard shout outs to President Trump, you need to do something to help us here in Chicago, because they don't have any money. And look, they have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. Everyone knows that. And on a non-holiday weekend, just disregarding the fact that we're considering it a non-holiday weekend opposed to a holiday weekend, which is Schützen Fest in Chicago.
Dude, Schützen, dude. Chicago. That's the name of the That's the name of the podcast. Chicago Schützen. That's it right there. Thank you.
Yeah, it's crazy. If any anti-gun person tries to engage you in an argument, you don't need to state facts. You don't need to argue with them. All you got to do is just look them straight in the eye and say, Chicago. That's it. That blows their entire argument out of the freaking water.
Wasn't there a movie where some character would always go Chicago Bang Bang? I can't remember
I don't know. There could be.
Because they watched movies and they were like, Chicago's apparently a big gangster town. So they were like, oh, if you go to Chicago, everybody's getting shot with Tommy guns, because that's what they saw in Hollywood. Well, now apparently that's back.
Yeah, pretty much.
So wait a minute. They're targeting these people in groups. So is it like groups of Bloods and Crips and
it's
Latin Kings?
One of these groups, it was a funeral
for a Blood or a Crip or a Latin King.
A random funeral. There was people. I think they were leaving a theater or some kind of a party. This isn't gang on gang. They're randomly shooting. They drive by, they see a bunch of people in a crowd, and they just shoot. It's not even gang on gang. It's gangbangers against everyone in the city of Chicago.
That sounds like the perfect job for Delta Force or SEAL Team 6, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It does, because you're in a major metropolitan city like Baghdad, and you are basically running down insurgents, hitting multiple houses, multiple locations, interrogating people, and working your way down. You get to 10 houses a night. Now, What I just said is probably going to a lot of the armchair lawyers are going to go, but you can't use the military for domestic law enforcement, because all of my favorite Ron Paul people, sarcasm, they cite the Posse Comitatus Act.
Yeah.
Well, there's a problem with the Posse Comitatus Act. If you went to law school, people might know this. The Posse Comitatus Act has never been. There's questions as to one, it's whether it's even constitutional on its face. The way it's even constructed, it's constitutional. The second thing is it's never actually been invoked or challenged. So constitutionally speaking and legally speaking, here's the thing. Posse Comitatus is not in the Constitution. It's a law. Well, you can pass a law that says you have to give me your firstborn child. Doesn't mean it's constitutional. There is a strong argument to be made that the commander of the chief of the United States Armed Forces in times of insurrection or crisis could send in the military to Chicago, and it's 100% legal. And see, nobody wants to hear that, but it's true. Because we've done it. When MacArthur went and cleaned out all the guys that were protesting, after the First World War in Washington.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's been done before,
Yeah. I mean, nobody.
But I don't see that happening, though.
I don't know. The thing is, look, I don't disagree with you. I don't see that happening in the normal context of everything, how this country works. Kind of like, Jeb Bush is president. Dude, Donald Trump, I never, ever say never with Donald Trump. You wake up and and today, Donald Trump, I mean, you want your daily presidential briefing, just open up Twitter and grab your ass because you don't know what the hell you're going to. He has no compunction about, well, this is the way we've always done it. He goes, this is stupid and we're dumb and we have to be smart and people are dying and we have the world's most powerful military and we have the world's most capable counterinsurgency force. We could go into Chicago and clean those motherfuckers out. We could round those motherfuckers up real quick.
They could, but if that was even on the table, it would be second term goals, not first term goals.
See, again, if Jeb Bush was president, that would apply. Barack Obama, he won't do it his first term, he'll do it his second term. Lame duck this or that, whatever. Well, the midterms are coming up and all these bullshit reasons. Donald Trump's like the honey badger, and honey badger don't give a fuck. I mean, look.
Yeah, I know.
Look, it's August. What is today? August 10th.
Yeah.
It's August 10th. Everybody's in complete denial on what I'm about to say, and this is a divergent off of Chicago, but it's still talking about Trump. Trump is shutting down the government in October. He's 100% shutting down the government in October, and it's going to be over the border wall. And everybody's like, no, he's not. He won't do it. And the last couple times the Republicans have shut down government, the Democrats have caved because very quickly the Republicans are getting rewarded and the Democrats are realizing the world isn't falling apart. The country still functions. But here's the trick. Earlier this year, Trump had signed this big bill and everybody was like, Donald Trump came out like all this money he was going to spend. And it was, everybody was upset because Donald Trump wasn't following what he said he would do. Like, he's spending all this money and this big ass budget. And, they negotiated and like the Department of Defense wanted, I don't know if it was 500, 600 billion, or maybe they gave him 700 billion, their budget, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And he came up there and he said, I am never signing another bill like this again. And everyone's like, yeah, whatever. Well, here's the deal. Part of the problem is they've signed the budgets, continuing resolutions through October, but they funded the Department of Defense. They gave the Department of Defense more money than they were asking for. The Department of Defense is funded into next year. So here's the thing. He can shut down the government in October, and you can't do that whole, but our soldiers are deployed, and what's going to happen if they don't get their checks, and, all that crazy bullshit. Trump is going to go apeshit crazy with the government, running government in October. And if he's going to do that in October, right before midterm elections, we could wake up tomorrow and SEAL Team 6 is in fucking goddamn Chicago. And the only difference is they're handcuffing everybody and only shooting some of them. I'm telling you. I mean, the dude that woke up and said Space Force, I mean, let's be real here. I kind of hope he does it. I hope he fucking does it.
I mean, you know what? It would be awesome. I would like to see it, but again, I'm not hopeful. We'll see.
Hey, do you follow Alex Jones at all?
No, I don't. No,
I don't either, really. I mean,
I have much better things to do than to follow him.
Dude, I saw something. Apparently, Alex Jones, in like 1 day or 2 days, over a 2-day period, he's been kicked off of Facebook. He's been kicked off of YouTube. And I believe he was.
There was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 different social media platforms he was whacked on. I mean, I saw
I think he was kicked off of Apple's iTunes store, his podcast.
Yeah.
And apparently what's happened is he's saying, well, he's got a good argument. And this is the thing. He has a really good argument. His argument is, isn't it interesting how all these companies all at once decided that they were going to whack my shit? And that sounds, I mean, that sounds like a monopolistic kind of behavior. I mean, he has a strong case to be made that could be bad. Now, the counter argument that's being made is very interesting, and there's some proof to back it up. YouTube and Facebook actually did not boot him first. What happened was, who's the guy that runs Apple? Tim Cook, is that his name? Tim Cook. He was meeting with one of his senior people, and they apparently were meeting over the weekend. And they were discussing Alex Jones because for some reason they were just like, this motherfucker's getting crazy. I don't know what he did to attract their attention, but they actually had a meeting with, like, apparently Tim Cook was talking about this at home on the weekend with his top people, what we're going to do about Alex Jones. So what they did is they decided to delist his podcast from the iTunes store, from the podcast apps, or from the podcast platform, iTunes. I guess it's called iTunes. I don't know, whatever. If you're listening to this on an iPhone, you're probably listening to us on iTunes through Apple. So they delisted they knocked off his podcast. Well, some other social media companies within 12 hours, they heard this and they immediately were like, well, if Apple can do it, we can do it. So they went through and whacked all this shit. But here's the thing. The argument is that Apple whacked, first the argument was all these companies got together and whacked Alex Jones, and that's some kind of monopolistic behavior that could be illegal. And then the second argument is Apple went first. They're the first $1 trillion company. They're the big mamma jammers. They don't have the reputation for censorship that other companies are having problems with. So when Apple did it, they used them as air cover to come in behind them and do it. Now people are noticing something with Apple, and this is a good point. Apple took his podcast out of their iTunes listing store, but Alex Jones has a website. He has an app. He has that you can download at least on the iPhone and probably I think in Google as well, Android. And they've left that app up. And people were like, well, wait a minute. How come Alex Jones's, whatever his service is called, how come his app is still up? And you can still listen to all the shit that they supposedly whacked in the app. And Apple hasn't stated this, but I know what they're doing. The argument is, and this is kind of going in with the whole idea that like social medias are publishers, which is hurting Facebook. And even like Rush Limbaugh has made this prediction in the past, and we talked about this because you actually were pushing that maybe we should open an app one day. Because what's happening is the argument was the future of the internet is not going to be websites, it's going to be apps. No one's going to go to your website through a browser. People are going to use the internet via an app.
Yeah.
And so what Apple has done is Apple is basically, they're looking at his app as the modern version of a website. They're not going to touch his website, or they're not going to touch his app. If you want to suck Alex Jones's dick, you're more than welcome to go in there and download his fucking app and put it on your phone. And if you don't like what he's doing, you're more than welcome to delete it off your phone. But it's not on their, they're not listing it and hosting it. They're not even, iTunes doesn't even actually host podcasts. But
yeah.
So now what's happened is Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are scrambling to try to clean up the mess. I don't know if Twitter took them down or not. Maybe they're like, well, wait a minute, we completely nuked this guy, and now we're going to get hammered. And Apple just really tweaked their policies. Yeah. And it's, I don't care about Alex Jones one shit, but it's really interesting to see how this is going to play out. And the media hasn't picked up on this app thing yet. They're just complaining about the app. Because you were telling me when we first started doing this a couple years ago, you were like, dude, we got to have an app. Remember that? Because you were like, yep, that's the weird thing. I do a lot of this IT technical shit, but you're normally the motivation behind it. And, it's interesting.
It's like pulling teeth, though.
You're welcome to get in there and get it done. Yeah.
Yeah, that's your job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was up late last night putting your goddamn video up, talking about your CZ452, and now this morning I'm going to be dealing with your podcast while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Someone's
got to get sleep.
Apparently, I'm your little IT bitch.
Yeah, well. That's why you make all the big bucks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I thought the Alex Jones thing was interesting, but it kind of, maybe you and I should think about, I just don't know what kind of money I want to spend on that, but if something happens to John 1911, they start blocking websites, or I don't know, like, remember, like, the government was the 3D printing thing is now in back in the news, because supposedly, you can 3D print a fucking howitzer now. And if you watch CNN, and, the State Department was trying to say that if you're a website that talked about technical gun information, you were violating ITAR. Well, that could come back in the future, and maybe our website gets whacked. But if we had an app,
yeah,
maybe that makes us more survivable.
I don't know.
It could happen when we produce enough content, enough video, and dude, there's tons of video coming. We might do an app.
Look, I think an app's a good idea. I'm not going to get into the whole app argument. We've hashed this back and forth for hours over the last couple of years. I'm not going to get back into it, but I've always thought having an app was a good idea.
Yeah, when we initially talked about it, we really only just had like a regular website. We weren't publishing audio and video, and now we're vomiting out so much of both, and we're paying for all the hosting of it.
Yeah,
I don't know. Part of me wonders. I wonder how much a backbone for an app would be. We'd have to hire app programmers, but I just thought that was something to consider.
I think it is. Down the road, we've got a lot of stuff on the table right now.
Like the East Coast facility the construction is moving ahead on that, and we're gonna have to start getting approvals for some of that stuff, and once it's approved, it'll take 2 years, but that's getting moved to the front burner. So they'll be seeing more shooting from the East Coast, not just what are we going to call the range here? can't call it the West Coast facility. What are we going to call it?
I don't know. We'll come up with something.
I figure it'll happen. It'll happen organically and magically.
It will. So, that's usually how it works.
Yeah. Hey, did you see how much the Valmet 223 gun? Did you see that auction that we were alerted on by a listener? Did you see that?
I saw the auction listing. Is it over?
It's over. I tried to make a run at it. It ended up selling for, I think, $1,200.
That's cheap.
It was, yeah. I think off the top of my head. So what it was is it was an like not a high end auction house. I think it might even be part of Bud's Guns. I'm not even sure who these people are. So we had to create an account. They're not even using any of the like normal auction clearinghouses, but it was a Valmet 223 Valmet, which is rare. It had a sling, it had a bipod, had a bayonet with scabbard, and I think it had a pile of magazines too. But it was missing it had a bolt carrier, but it was missing a bolt head.
And
that was hurting. That was hurting it. Well, because it's not all matching, which would hurt it with the collectors. But we were like, dude, we've got a 223 Valmet. We could buy it, fix it, flip it, buy it, get a Valmet bolt from somewhere, flip it, or buy it, get a high quality AK bolt, have it fitted. Something that's milled. Or keep it for part, or break it up into parts, keep what we want, and then sell the rest.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt that was a steal.
That was a steal, but you had to be willing to take the risk, And that was that thing was like was like a bright sun, like it was like so obvious that was such a good buy.
I mean, hell, the accessories, the bayonet, scabbard, sling, mags, almost justified the price.
Check this out. I haven't even told you this. Remember when we did the video on the Valmet magazines?
Yes.
There's like the HK33 mags that people were converting to use them in 223 Valmets, and then there's like true Valmet mags.
Yeah.
And we kind of figured out that like those converted mags are horseshit. They really don't work well. Well, when we came out with that analysis, because we discovered it, what we did is before we released it publicly, we went out and found a pile of 223 magazines and bought a shit ton of them. Like we bought like a pile. I'd be like, it's a pile of them. Yeah. And we bought them in bulk. And so we ever got a price. Well, I think the retail on them was $250 maybe at the time.
Yeah, something like that.
I checked on Gunbroker last week or this past weekend. Valmet magazines, true blue Valmet magazines, 223s, have gone up to like $450. And I can't help but think that we did that.
Look, there's no doubt we did that. And the reason is the Valmet market is so small. There's not a whole lot of videos and podcasts and and stuff on the internet about the Valmet. I mean, there is a lot of stuff on the Valmet, but the guys that are into the Valmets peruse the internet, and it's not like a Glock. There's millions and millions and millions of shit on the Glock. You could do a post on a Glock and no one will see it. But with the Valmet, there's not that much out there on it, so it jumps out. And the Valmet guys, I guarantee you, they took interest.
We had one guy reach out. He complained. He said that it's not Valmet, it's Valmet. And
whatever.
I was like, okay, whatever, which may be true. I wasn't offended.
Okay, it probably is Versailles, Versailles, Milan, Milan, whatever. I hate people that get into semantic arguments because that just means they're a big fucking douche nozzle. If you revert to semantics, that's like, losing an argument by, you know, resorting to name calling. Oh, well, yeah, but you're a big duty head now. Oh, fuck you.
You know what? I'll see your semantic argument and raise you pedantic. How's that for a 50-cent word?
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
I don't even know how to pronounce it. Like, I mean, you know, does anybody pronounce
the whole
H and K fucking right?
look. I used to irritate the shit out of collectors because, you know, it's the Mosine Nagan, you know, Mosin Nagand. I used to call it the Mossy Noggin just to piss them off.
Yeah, you were one of the biggest dealers at the time.
You know, yeah, like I said, I hate this.
It's part of the internet. I mean, look, as long as the guy is, as long as the guy is, you know, as long as it's said, you know, with some humor, you know, I mean, we all want to be educated. I took it as an education, and the guy wasn't being a super douche about it. He wasn't being a douche at all, but he was just making a point. And, you know, but you know as well as I do, in the collector, the more, you know, gun collectors, the true collectors can be dickheads. They can be, the Korth revolver people, fuck you and the horse you rode in on. Those are some of the most insufferable sons of bitches you will have ever run across. If you want to see the dickhead gun collectors.
It's like this. If you pay $5,000 for a $300 revolver, you have to defend that shit. I mean, viciously.
Yeah. I
mean, you know,
there was a Korth revolver guy, and I haven't talked about this guy. I'm not going to say his name because I'll never forget his name, but he was just fucking unreal. What he would do is he set Google to keyword alert him. So he set it up for Korth and all the keywords for Korth. So anywhere on the internet, if someone typed in the word Korth and Korth revolver or Willie Korth, I don't know exactly all the details, but you could tell it's what he did. He would get an alert and he would roll in. He would swan dive into there in his like Korth savior outfit and basically proceed. Because, you know, what immediately would happen, be like, well, I don't understand why that's so expensive. It's not better than my Python. And that's a legitimate conversation. Yeah. But this guy would roll in, and what he would do is he basically would find arguments to get into. And he would do this. This was his hobby. And I actually had crossed paths with him once. And I said, you're the best and the worst brand ambassador for Korth in the entire United States. I said, Korth loves customers like you because you're so into it and you spend all the money, you step up and you know all the history and the details and the variances and whatever, but you're such a toxic son of a bitch and you show up all over the fucking internet and shit on everybody that doesn't understand Korth revolvers. They don't sell guns in this country because of you. It's your fucking fault. And I actually, since I said that to him, he's kind of backed off that. He hasn't. As a matter of fact, he started selling off a bunch of his Korth revolvers on Gunbroker. If you see a Korth revolver for sale on Gunbroker, 9 times out of 10, it's this guy.
Well,
and I probably shouldn't say that, but I did.
Yeah, whatever.
Pedantic gun collectors are the worst.
Yeah, you know, you never. And this is what a lot of the internet forum guys get into. You know, they always forget that at one point in time they were a noob themselves. And anytime, and I hate seeing this on forums, a guy will walk in and ask a really simple, silly question. You know, it's just a novice question, you know. And what'll happen is some guys will shit on them. But this is what I hate is when someone will roll in and go, this subject has been covered numerous times, do a toolbar search and, you know, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, I know what they're doing, they're saying, look, the answers to your questions are on here. You just have to look for them. But what they're doing is they're taking a guy who knows nothing and they're basically telling him, you know what? You're a noob. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And I really don't have time to waste on you. So go do the search yourself. And that turns them off because the guy's like, some guys will be like, oh, okay, cool, I'll do the search. And other guys will be like, God, what a dick. I just asked a simple question. The guy could have put in a one-line answer for me, Or you know what? He could have went himself and found an old post, copied the link, posted the link on there and said, hey, man, here's a link. Go ahead and this will answer your question. Just read through the comments on this link. And you know what? And that's helpful. Just going, oh, this has been covered numerous times. Go do a search, you asshole, which is what they're saying. And again, a lot of these guys they tend to forget that at one point in time, everyone was a dumbass and didn't know shit. Everyone listening to this podcast at one point in time was a dumb shit and didn't know crap about anything because everyone starts at zero and you build from there.
That happens to me quite a bit because here's the thing. I'm more of a modern shooter. Like if it's, I'm the tactical douche and you're the milsurp hunter guy. Okay. And so when we have guns in the reference collection or we're looking at making this acquisition, like the Valmet rifles, the Valmet, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an AK guy at all. And I certainly am not I've heard the term Valmet. I know that all the cool kids think they're great, but it was like, I don't know shit about these guns and one from the other. So what do? Oh, look, there's a forum for Valmets and you roll in there because I'm trying to get educated. And if I don't tread very carefully, it'll immediately turn into what you just described.
Yeah.
And talk about, self-selecting failure for your little club because you're not bringing in new members, which is why we started John 1911. Because anyone that wants to come in and whack noobs or people that don't know anything, I don't believe in dumb questions. They're not welcome on John 1911. So,
yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree. It's just, and that's one of the reasons I don't hang on forums anymore. Well, the other reason is I'm just too damn busy with other stuff to be, spending. If I spend an hour on a forum, you know what? That's an hour I wasted that doing something productive that I could do somewhere down the road. And again, anyone that hangs out on forums, I'm not shitting on forums. I use forums for research all the time. I just am, and don't get me wrong, back in the early days, back when I was, dealing gun parts, the forums, man, that's where all my customers came from. I'm not knocking forums. I'm just saying I've outgrown them.
I kind of have I haven't really said this publicly, but it's kind of one of these. I don't have it completely worked out in my mind, but there's some kind of direct correlation between the number of posts a person will have on a forum, and I don't know if it's maybe weekly, daily, monthly, or lifetime, versus the amount of rounds they fire daily, weekly, monthly, or lifetime. Yeah. And what ends up happening is there's a direct correlation between when you have more comments and activity on a forum than you shoot bullets over a similar time period, you're in serious danger of crossing over into the douchebag territory.
Yeah.
If you think you're an academic, write a book for us all.
Yeah.
But a bunch of comments and postings shitting on people that need help, that's, when you could be out shooting. I find forums to be a little tedious. So, we haven't really talked about this. We need to discuss it, and we can do it now. It's about the rifle, the East Coast or the West Coast facility. I don't know what the fuck to call it. So, we need a tower. I've decided we need a tower. I found a tower for sale. It's 60 feet tall. I haven't made an offer on it yet, but I was considering it. So our contractors have a crane, And they were like, yeah, we got a crane. We can lift shipping containers. We can do this. And I was like, okay. So I reach out to him and it's like, how big's your crane? Like, what can we do here? And they came back and said their crane reaches 30 feet tall and will lift 4 tons. So it's like a little crane, like on a truck, which is fine. But he goes, well, how tall is this tower? I'm like, well, it's published 60 feet, but I don't know if I'll assemble the entire thing. And he's like, holy shit. So what he did is he's mentioned this before, and I have discounted it because, one, I didn't think maybe he didn't understand what we were trying to do. And two, I may not have understood what he was describing. Here's what he says. He said there's a guy that he knows that has scaffolding. And he suggests that maybe we build a scaffold system to shoot off of. Now, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cute, but it's going to have a lot of movement. It's in danger of tipping over. We'll guy wire it. We'll probably guy wire anything, which is fine. But it's like, is it going to even have stairs on it? What are we looking at here? And then he goes, and I was kind of like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. But then he goes, this scaffolding came from some power plant. And he said that this scaffolding could go 10 stories tall. And it's super heavy duty and safe because they had an accident at the power plant where somebody was using like the system from the top, like the window cleaners where they come down from the top, and the system failed and people died. And so for insurance purposes, they had all the scaffold, all the work outside these cooling towers had to be done with these scaffolding systems. And he said they rappel off this thing where it's currently set up now. And I'm like, I don't know, man. They're rappelling off of it. So anyway, long story short, this guy, this scaffolding, it may be more than what I'm thinking, like normal construction scaffolding is, that they use to put bricks on houses. Do you know if there's is there a heavier duty scaffolding that you're familiar with, since you're more of a Bob Vila guy that I don't know about?
Yeah. Their scaffolding comes in all different sizes. I mean, okay, like, for example, you're building a standard, 2-story house, and you have standard construction scaffolding. But, if you're building a bigger structure, something that's, say, 5 or 6 stories, you got to have bigger scaffolding,
Okay. I mean, well, here's the thing. This is, this may be like super heavy duty commercial. I don't know how big it is. Like I worry about the platform at the top. It's got to have some kind of system at the top. I don't want it to be like 3 feet by 5 feet, because that's, you get one guy up there and he can't even lay prone. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll just have to look into it and see what we can come up with. But the good news is, because it's the farmer economy, maybe we'll get it super cheap. It could be $60,000 scaffolding that we get for $1,500.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
So,
I'm gonna try to go and look at this week.
The first thing you got to do is, is basically just look at it, see what, see what's out there,
Yeah. Apparently it's set up somewhere, and I was told they used to rappel off of it, and quote, I don't think the guy's using it anymore. I think they're older, and they just never took it down.
I have seen like scaffolding towers for like, large jobs.
Really?
And I'm not saying I've seen them, 100 feet tall, because I'm just not around, the that type of construction a lot.
You're not building the USS Enterprise.
Yeah, exactly. But I've seen towers that have like 5 platforms. You know, like, okay, you got a standard, you know, you got a ground level platform, and then I guess it'd be like, you know, 6 or 7. Yeah, well, it's probably like 7, 8 feet above that because you got to have height for men, and then another platform, and then above that, you know, at the same distance to where they've been stacked like 4 or 5 platforms high, and there's like ladders to go to each level, you know. So
are there ladders inside the footprint, or are they stairs?
Well, it's a ladder, but it goes diagonal from the, like, say, the bottom left corner to the top right corner. And what that ladder does, and it's a narrow ladder, but it also serves as like a railing, so you don't fall out the outside of the scaffolding.
Okay.
You know, and I'm sure there's tons and tons of all different types of, you know, scaffolding. But yeah, there's, you know, I don't know what this guy's got, but you know, the average.
You would think a rappelling tower at minimum's got to be 40 feet tall, right? I mean, shit.
God, it's got to be at least 40 or 50, because I mean, otherwise, what's the sense?
Well, I mean, maybe they're just civilians and they're goofing off. So maybe it's like goof off. Maybe 20 feet.
Well,
20
I mean,
feet's
I don't
still
know.
Pretty legit.
The average story on a house is what, 10 feet?
I always call it 12, but yeah, 10 to 12 feet.
Okay, so if you have 40 feet, that's say a 3.5 to 4 story building. And I guess 40 feet would be decent enough to rappel off of. But yeah, it's got to be stable, because if you're rappelling off of it, it's not like you're working on a scaffolding. I mean, you know, shit. You know, if you're putting all the weight on one side, it's got to have guide wires or something to make it stable. It has to.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they were like, this has come up before, and I kind of blew it off. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. I didn't think about what they were saying. I'm like, if they're rappelling off this sumbitch, this must be a lot different than what I've seen. So, you know, like, what's interesting is, look, we do the shipping container, and we have to do a ladder or something to get up to the top of the shipping container. That's 9.5 feet. The base, the floor of the shipping container. They'll have to have some kind of floor. We could put a structure up there. I don't know, whatever. But that, you're standing on the top of the shipping container, realistically figure 5 feet above, you know, that's 14 feet eye level, 14, 15 feet eye level, you know, figure 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall. So, you know, if we took a 20-foot tower or 25-foot tower and we set it behind the shipping container, we make a foundation. I mean, you know, like we prep the ground.
Yeah.
And then we lash and weld the bottom of this scaffold to the shipping container. We guy wired as well, but it turns into, you know, a tower on top of the shipping container and a way to get on top of the shipping container. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it almost works together.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, I definitely want to put some welds on it, or weld some brackets or something to make it solid.
Because we can build a floor. We could build a floor on top of the shipping container, and that can still be an admin area halfway up, or, you know, a couple feet up the tower. So, you know, I want to go look and at least entertain this conversation before we go to freaking Chicago to buy a 60-foot tower that we're going to have to hire a flatbed tractor trailer and a crane to install.
Yeah, well, and, you know, who the hell wants to go to Chicago right now? They're shooting into crowds.
Well, you know, and that's, I didn't even think about it like that, but yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So, you were up last night. I wasn't. Was there a football game last night? A bunch of people protested.
What's that?
Was there a NFL football game last night and a bunch of people protested? I thought I saw a headline that said yes.
Yeah, I think so. I saw a blurb. I didn't read any articles or anything on it, but I think there was a preseason game or something like that. And yeah, some of the guys, a couple guys knelt, a couple of them held their fist in the air, which means in typical fashion, the NFL is not going to do a goddamn thing about it. And they're going to lose more money and they're going to lose more viewers. But what's interesting, though, is if the NFL does man up and drops a set, they'll squash this today or tomorrow, or at least by Monday.
Did you hear what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys? And we predicted this.
Yeah, Jones is
Old man Jerry Jones.
He's like, yeah, no one's doing that shit here.
He's like from the Marge Schott School of Sports Franchise Ownership.
Well,
it's
and you know what?
My way or the highway.
And that's what they all should be.
But check this out. Did you apparently? I don't follow football. Like, I know who Jerry Jones is because I'm old, and Jerry Jones is about, he's been around 100 years like me, so I've heard of the man. So, but I guess I saw this kid, and to me, he's a kid. He's a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. His name is Dak, D-A-K. I assume it's Dak Prescott. And good-looking kid. He's black. He's a good-looking kid. And he apparently had some press conference, and he was trying his best to thread the needle somewhat, but he was coming out saying,
I saw it.
And the thing is,
he's trying to be the good guy for both sides.
You know what? I perceived that he wasn't trying to keep it in the middle. I think he was more on the side of not doing any of this shit.
But he was still staying the good guy, He was.
But happening here is it's going to be Dak Prescott, the Dallas Cowboys versus everybody. And the NFL has to know this.
Sure they do.
But then what happens if you're a franchise owner and, some bumfuck franchise like the Bengals, and your football players are constantly getting arrested, constantly in the fucking news for shit that isn't good, and then they're showing up on the field acting a fool, and a bunch of people, a bunch of Bengals fans start wearing Dallas Cowboy jerseys and paying money to the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, this could easily turn into like a huge lopsided fucking nightmare. And
it could. I mean,
they're going to ruin the NFL.
The NFL has dropped the ball on this for the past 2 years. What they really need to do, and look, I'm not a freaking genius, and I'm not an expert. I mean, this is just common sense. The franchise owners need to jump on this real quick and tell everyone to stop. And the NFL needs to sit there and hammer fines. And I'm not talking about bullshit fines like, oh, well, if you protest, you're going to get a $10,000 fine. $10,000 fine to a baby millionaire is like me throwing a quarter across the street and saying, fuck it. I mean, really, they need to go in there and say, guess what? If you kneel, go ahead and kneel. That's fine. We're going to let everyone kneel. But anyone who kneels during the national anthem is going to accrue a $100,000 fine. Well, let me tell you something, partner. With 16 games out of the year, there's more NFL players that can't afford $100K a game because a lot of them don't make 1.6 mil. And if they do, okay, say you make 2 mil. Oh, okay, well, I stood my ground and I knelt for every game, but now I got to live on $400K.
You make 2 mil, you're paying 40% taxes.
Yeah, well, now you're living on $100K.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. And by the way, where the hell were all these protesters last weekend when 70 people were shot in Chicago? Fuck you and your protest.
The comedian, the black comedian who was calling the woman that works for, she was just hired by the New York Times editorial board. He he was like, I don't know if she's Japanese or Chinese, but she's definitely crazy knees. And he actually came out and said, we haven't seen a hoot or holler out of any of these NFL protesters all summer when all this shit's been going on.
Yep.
And he's like, now they're going to be back on. He predicted, he's like, they're going to be back up on TV. They're going to be out there protesting. It's like, where the fuck were they in goddamn June?
Yeah.
And that was a really good point. I was like, I didn't think about that, Terrence.
It's totally a valid point, and it's true. Hey, off season, you didn't hear hide nor hair of anyone. The only thing you heard is when the NFL made their new rules on the kneeling. You had the players union and a few select players come out and say how it was bullshit and whatnot. So, but look, the bottom line is it can be squelched. Okay, the NFL fines every player who protests $100,000. Then the franchise owner says, guess what? If you want to protest, go ahead, but we're going to take a 10% cut in pay. And you know what? When the union gets up and bitches about it, the franchise owners in the NFL says, fuck you.
Yeah, I think Jerry Jones has said that if you do this on my team, you're off the team. Like, there's no fining.
Well,
that's the thing. It's like that. This fining stuff is like bullshit. It's like, if you walk into McDonald's and I like a Big Mac and large Coke and extra fries, and the person behind the counter insulted you to your face, well, they would just fucking fire you. It's like, you can't insult your goddamn customers. I don't care if you don't like that guy or not. And it's just interesting to see how that's going to go, because the NFL is going to turn into NASCAR. Speaking of NASCAR, so if the NFL is going to turn into NASCAR, what's the over under that Goodell is going to get pulled over in the Hamptons with OxyContin and drunk in his car? Did you hear about the CEO of NASCAR?
Yeah. That guy's a mess.
I guess it's the France family that owns NASCAR, and
they're trying to sell. They're trying to sell the franchise. Actually,
are they really?
Yep.
I mean, I didn't know that.
Look, the France family has destroyed NASCAR, and now that they've got it nice and destroyed, they want to get out.
So here's what happened. So the CEO, Brian France, Franz, you're saying? I don't know, but I call it France. It's spelled France. The CEO and chairman of NASCAR was arrested for DUI on Sunday evening in the Hamptons. And cops say he was also in possession of oxycodone. The 56-year-old, one of the most powerful people in professional sports, was initially stopped in Sag Harbor, New York, while driving a 2017 Lexus. Cops say he blew through a stop sign at 7:30 p.m. During the stop, we're told officers suspected France was intoxicated and conducted field sobriety tests, which France bombed. We're told France's blood alcohol level was more than twice the legal limit. Cops say during the stop they found oxycodone pills during a search of his person. So he didn't have oxycodone in his luggage while he's traveling because he's having dental problems. He had oxy in his pocket. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Oh, yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. Here we go. Don't you know who I am? Here it comes. And sources tell us during the process, France was name-dropping all the powerful people he knew and even mentioned his relationship with President Donald Trump. I know the president. Oh, yeah, you're standing on the side of the road. Yeah, there's some white privilege motherfucker. You standing on the side of the road, drunk as a skunk with dope in your pocket, name-dropping the president. Tell me how that's fucking working for you.
Yeah.
God, what a fucking jack. Dude, I gotta find that dash cam. Sag Harbor. Is it a police department, Sag Harbor? Or is it is it Hamptons? But I'll find it.
I don't know.
So NASCAR is like, people that like, I don't really follow NASCAR. I only like Who's the one you told me about the guy? And actually, that's what made me fan of. Who's the one NASCAR guy that he never had sponsors, but he always raced on everybody's bald ass tires, and he finally died. What was his name?
Oh,
Buddy, but
no, not Buddy.
Buzz. Anyway, there's one.
I believe I don't remember his name.
Yeah, there was anyway. So like, the rest of it's so
JD McDuffie.
JD McDuffie. So he's the only NASCAR driver that's worth a shit, and he's dead. And apparently, right now, Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones are the only NFL people that are worth a shit. And I might even buy a Dallas Cowboys jersey and wear it until they piss me off and I burn the motherfucker. But they're going to turn the NFL into NASCAR. And if you don't follow NASCAR, and I don't, but you told me this, and I looked into it, NASCAR's ratings are like from its peak 10 years ago or whatever, it's down.
God. Well, let me tell you something. Back years ago before they started destroying the sport, I was a big NASCAR fan. I religiously watched the race every Sunday, or at least taped it and watched it later. I'd go to 3 or 4 races a year. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these races, I mean, you could buy tickets from scalpers, but a lot of these races, you had to have, you had to buy your tickets a year in advance. Hell, as a matter of fact, at one point I held season tickets to the Brickyard 400. And now, not only they can't fill the hell at Charlotte, they tore down the back grandstands on the racetrack because on TV it looks bad having empty stands. So what they do is they crunch all the stands to the front straightaway, and that's where they pack the people they can fill the seats with. That way it looks full. I mean, the attendance is down. They pissed off so many of their core fans. Now, I mean, there's newer and younger people coming into the sport, and anyone under 30 doesn't remember the time I'm talking about. But the truth is, call it what you will, the younger people that are getting into the sport aren't going to races, or they wouldn't be tearing down grandstands.
That's true.
One of the last races I watched, and I haven't watched a race in several years, I don't remember what track it was, but the grandstands were so empty on, I think it was the back straightaway over the seats, so it didn't look bad having a bunch of empty seats at the track. They had big sponsorship banners placed over the seats to where it looked like it was like a billboard wall.
Wow.
Yeah.
NASCAR used to be a money-making machine. I don't think people today understand that.
Honestly, the Francis sold their soul to Toyota, and Toyota pumps big money into the sport.
Mm-hmm. And Toyota runs a car that isn't a stock car.
Hell, none of the cars are stock cars anymore. Hell, I was talking to someone last week, and because I was asking him, it's just like, well, how Dodge doing? Dodge hasn't been in it in like 2 years, and I'm like, wow, okay. Hell, I think they said next year, and I could be wrong on this, don't quote me. I think they said next year the GM body style is going to the Camaro, and I think, because I was asking him, I said, well, since Ford's basically stopping manufacturing their, basically everything but trucks and SUVs.
And the Mustang.
And the Mustang, I said, what are they still using Fusions? And I think he said they're going to, either they are or they're going to be using the Mustang body style. And I'm like, so basically it's ARCA. Because, and he laughed because, back in the old guys that used to watch racing, knows what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's not important, but they race different body styles. So, it's like the old ARCA race where I'm not going to get into it. We can talk about it later.
But basically, the cars are so custom now. They're not even trying to.
NASCAR stands for North American Stock Car Racing. And the old rules were the manufacturer that was in there had to produce, I think it was like 500.
I thought it was 10,000.
No, it wasn't that much. They had to produce at least 500 cars that fit the qualifier to race in NASCAR. Which means, it had to have, rear wheel drive. It had to have, the basically a 350 or equivalent engine, and it had to, have the same body style. And because, if they produce the Monte Carlo, not every Monte Carlo is going to be a NASCAR edition,
Yeah.
So same with the Thunderbird. Going back to the old Monte Carlo Thunderbird days. But my point is, hell, Toyota doesn't make a rear-wheel drive car.
Toyota doesn't even. You could make the argument that none of these cars are really stock anymore, but Toyota's not even pretending.
Hell, Toyota doesn't make a V8 engine.
They might now. I think Toyota's coming. They've got one in one of their new LS. They have some sports car they've got now. No, Toyota's got a V8 because they got it in their Lexus cars. Well, wait a minute. I'm driving a fucking V8 Toyota right now.
I don't believe they do, but whatever.
Dude, I'm driving a V8 Toyota right now.
That's a truck. That's a truck.
Yeah, that's a truck edge. Yeah. No, but Toyota did have a 4.6 liter V8. They absolutely did. Because I had a Lexus with a 4.6 liter V8 in it. So they did, but they weren't making it as like a regular sedan or something.
Okay.
Like I don't know. Like whatever car that Toyota is racing isn't like a stock car. The car doesn't exist. Like the Camry, like you were telling me, the Camry has to be a rear-wheel drive car. Like 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 there's no such thing as a rear-wheel drive Camry. So, but anyway, but anyway, NASCAR is just all fucked up, and and
destroyed the sport. So,
and the NFL. The thing is, the kids today, they don't realize this. They think shit lasts forever. See, they don't see you can fuck up a country, you can fuck up an economy, you can fuck up a business, and you can fuck up a sport. And people, just the young kids now, they just think that, this is these good times, this is how it is now. And it's just like, nope, the NFL isn't going to collapse. So, hey, are you a big Aerosmith fan?
Not a big fan, but yeah, I like Aerosmith. I grew up listening to them.
I don't watch American Pickers, the TV show, but did you hear the news story about the American Pickers?
I saw a link. I saw a link on it and I perused it. But yeah, it's apparently they found one of their old, I guess before they were famous, one of their old tour vans. Well, not really a tour van, basically a van they crammed their crap into and they would go play out.
Yeah. What it is, this, when they were just like a little whatever band traveling around. Man, this van, it's crazy looking, but it's got this weird piece of art, like this character painted on the side of it. And supposedly the American Picker guys found this van in somewhere in the Northeast outside of Boston. The van is a 1964 International Harvester Metro van. This thing looks like some van that came out of Europe in the 50s. It's creepy. It's crazy looking van, which is worth nothing, which is why some aspiring rock kids, got this. It's our, that's how they all slept in that van and drove around. I just thought that was kind of a neat story. I'm surprised to see that kind of stuff still even being found. So,
speaking of Aerosmith, I was up in Massachusetts last week. Don't ask. And
Are you telling me not to ask, or is that a prompt for me to ask? Do I need to ask?
No, you don't. I was up in Massachusetts visiting people that I know, and we were out on guy's boat, tooling around in actually around Cape Cod Bay. But anyway, as we were motoring by, and I got pictures of it too, by the way. He's like, "Hey, that's Steven Tyler's house right there." So
I assume they're from that area. I take it. I guess they're.
yeah, they're a Boston local band.
I didn't know that, but that would make sense why they found their van up there too. And I guess the dude's got a house up there. So,
Yeah.
how old is Steven Tyler? Is he 80 yet?
He's like 853 years old.
He's
I don't know how old he is, but dude's, I mean, he's got to be up there.
Look, straight up legit.
He's got to be in his 70s.
He's got to be in his 70s. I mean, shit. I mean, how old am I? I'm 46. I mean, it's like, and he was goddamn old when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Man, I don't know how old he is, but he's got to be 70.
He's got to be in the 70s. So,
I mean,
hey,
every bit of it. I mean, shoot, they've been around since what, 60s, early 70s, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, I got one more that we'll wrap this one up because it kind of went long. So, they always are finding, excuse me, they're always finding, relics and weapons and ordnance, in the Eastern Front between, Germany and Russia. They're always finding all this shit. Did you see the story? Excuse me. Did you see the story that came out of Japan about all the guns they found underneath the elementary school?
I did. And you know what, though? You never hear about that. But it's not, I mean, really, when you think about it, it really isn't shocking, though, because, I mean,
if you know your history of what the Japanese are planning on doing, and what their battle plan was for 1946, 47, like didn't the War Department, they predicted that the World War II, Japan would extend into like 40, they knew it'd go to at least 47, maybe 49.
Yeah, and they were expecting, hell, just the invasion, they were expecting like 1 million casualties. I mean, it was going to be ugly. It was literally going to be door-to-door fighting, or at least that's what they were expecting.
Oh, the Japanese, see, that's like, like all these kids today, like, oh yeah, America's so bad because we're the only country to drop nuclear weapons on people. And it's like, if you look at the historic,
we saved 1 million lives plus.
Oh, we saved millions of Japanese lives. Here's the thing. So like they've declassified radio traffic. And so the first bomb went off and the Japanese were, they're discussing it and they're getting the reports of how many they think are dead casualties. And, they're like, well, we can keep fighting because the Americans, they don't have, they can only do this once. And suddenly we were like, okay, we'll do it again. And so we dropped another one and they were like, well, yeah, but we could go underground and we can keep, like, they were not going to surrender. The second bomb, this is where people get their history wrong. The second bomb going off did not convince the Japanese military that they should surrender. They were not going to surrender. What happened was Hirohito decided, he was like, I got to wrest control back here. We're going to end this. And after Hirohito made that decision, the military, there was like a bunch of guys, like before he made his big speech on the radio, where, like first time, like all these Japanese people even heard the emperor's voice, the God Emperor, like there would have been a battle or something at the fucking palace because a bunch of military guys had stormed the fucking palace to stop him from doing this shit. I mean, it was crazy. The Japanese, to, kamikaze airplanes, kamikaze submarines, kamikaze attacks. They were gonna have like run their kids into the machine guns, run their women into the machine guns. It was they were going to starve. It was crazy.
Oh yeah.
And I'll bet you they there's still tons of weapons buried that they haven't found yet in Japan.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah.
But these things are roached.
Oh, sure they are, because they were buried. But
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I'm sure they were wrapped in protective cloth and that, and even put in grease. But 75 years later,
Yeah.
you take a you take any firearm, even if you rub it down with Cosmoline and wrap it in a plastic bag, bury it in your backyard, see what it looks like 75 years later.
What the hell was it? This came out from the invasion plans of Japan. So, like, the Germans knew that the Americans were either going to. They knew Normandy was a possibility, and then is it Bordeaux? Was the other one, or Calais?
Calais.
They were so, like, there were only so many places the Americans were going to come across.
Yeah.
So the Germans were kind of ready. Then we faked some stuff to make them think that we were going somewhere else, and we came in Normandy. The same thing was going on in Japan after Iwo Jima and Okinawa. The Japanese had come out. The Japanese knew that we were going to probably land on, was it the southern side of Kyushu, this island, and then they had moved double the amount of troops onto this island than were at, I think, Iwo Jima. And the Americans, their plan was like, okay, we're going to have to come in here. This is the most logical place. We're going to have to, fight this. So the one idea they came up with is like, we're going to drop 7 atomic bombs on the beaches. And then, what was it? The Americans were going to stay offshore. They said like a couple miles, what it would be. And then like they would drop 7 bombs on the beaches, and then we would come in and hit the beaches. And, it's like, just think about how nuts that is, first of all.
Yeah.
Like obviously they didn't really understand radiation yet. They really had no.
I mean, look at all the A-bomb test where they had troops out there.
Yeah,
they all died.
Yeah, but if it's like also like the idea that like the Americans were going to be able to just sit a few miles off shore, and then drop A-bombs, then quickly come in and clean up the area, because if you're just a couple miles offshore, guess what? You're within easy striking distance of kamikaze aircraft and kamikaze submarines. It was like, if you look at the historical records of what the invasion of Japan was going to entail, like they were anticipating fighting was going to go into 40. I know 47, and they were, I think, even possibly 49. See, and that's the thing. Like kids today, they're like, the war's going to end. They look at history and they're like, well, the war's going to end in 45 in August, and it'll be over. And it's like nobody knew that. Nobody was planning for that. Like World War I, when it ended, like they were making plans for the 1919 spring offensive.
Yeah.
And the war ended in 1918.
Well, and another thing that a lot of people don't pay attention to, and this is a secondary benefit of dropping the atomic bombs, is after Europe was won, the Soviet Union went up there and gobbled up half of Europe, thus the beginning of the Cold War. Well, after Europe was over and they gobbled up half of Europe, they started coming down, and they were going to help us tackle Japan. And we did not want the Soviet Union gobbling up half of Asia. So, mind you, we were the only ones with the atomic bomb at the time. And it was basically, because, remember, George Patton's like, hey, we got an army here. Let's kick the Russians' ass while we're ready.
Rommel made the same argument. Rommel made the same argument before he died. He was like, we should team up with the Americans and fight the Russians.
Yeah, well,
he was making that argument in like what, 43.
Yeah. So, basically, after dropping the two bombs on Japan, it was a message to the Soviet Union to back off. We've got this.
Yeah, historically, but it's interesting. Historically, it turns out they figured out Joe Stalin. He knew about the bomb before we dropped it.
Well, that's fine, but he
knew we had it.
He knew we had it. He didn't know we only had two operational at the time, though.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, basically, there would not have been a third bomb. I mean, there could have been eventually, but we only had two bombs ready to drop, and we dropped them.
I don't know. Yeah, I know there was two bombs we dropped. I don't know. Like, I'm not that much of a Los Alamos nerd. I don't know how much fissile material and how far along in the building process.
Oh,
we had more.
They were in the process of making more, and they did. But at the time when we dropped the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs, those were the only two bombs we had in theater to drop. It wouldn't.
I've always heard that, but I think one thing I've learned with time is I've learned not to accept history as it's presented to me at face value, because it could have been a situation. Yeah, these are the only two bombs we had at the time, but given another week, we might have had another one.
Oh, we would have. I mean, it might have taken more than a week, but the point you have to look at is we only had two bombs in theater. The rest of the bombs were not completed. We were working on more, and
Yeah.
I mean, we had, I don't know, we fired off 2 or 3 in testing before, we shipped the 2 in theater to use. I mean, they were working on more, and they would have had more. And the thing is, if those two wouldn't have stopped the war, by the time they would have went to implement an invasion plan, they would have had more of them. I mean, it's not we only made 2 and stopped.
Oh no! Well, they had plans to invade Kyushu with fucking 7 of them.
So and we would have had if they were planning on 7, we would have had, if not 7, we would have had them. 6.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And here's the thing: those crazy fuckers would have used them too. Nobody wanted to fucking go into Japan because the Japanese had been starving for years. I mean, the Japanese were. it was just how the kids today try to rewrite history in Japan.
Well, and I mean, the Japanese were telling the citizens, you got to fight to the death because, Americans will eat your babies. And I mean, they were telling them all kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah, like this cache of weapons that they found at the school, like it wasn't like, think about it. Dude, they found 1,400 firearms.
Oh, and it's like, you looked at the pictures, you'll notice most of them were machine guns.
Most of them are light to heavy machine guns. Yeah, it's like, it's not 1,400 Nambu fucking pistols.
No.
Or whatever it is. It's, like I said, 1,400 firearms, 1,200 bayonets and swords, number of grenades and ammunition.
Bunch of magazines.
Bunch of magazines.
Yeah, I mean they were
Type 99, tons of Type 99 and Type 96 light machine guns.
Yeah, and there were a lot of Aerosmith rifles there too as well. But
oh yeah, there are piles of them.
Yeah,
but it's interesting, like it would be really neat if one day, they come across a nice cache of this stuff that maybe is in a cave and it's better preserved for some reason. And, maybe we can change the gun laws in this country, and maybe we can create a class of gun license where you're a historical collector and you can function almost like a museum, and you're able to acquire post-86 machine guns like that. The historical argument, because I know no one agrees with this, but like one of the problems museums have now, museums that do collect arms and armor, especially, firearms, one of the problems is there's no real exemption for museums for post 86. So, like, for example, how does a museum take on SCAR rifles? Because here's the thing. If the SCAR rifle is successful or it's not successful, 20 years from now, the early SCAR rifles and the variants and the designs, like, oh, we came up with this idea and this was a prototype and this turned out to be dog shit, those will be historically significant and mechanically interesting, but museums have no way to acquire these right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. I don't expect that to happen anytime in the near future, but it would be really nice if it did. I will say this though. What's an interesting?
Would you trade 3D printing for a modern historical collector's license that allows post 86? That would be an interesting conversation.
That would be an interesting conversation. And on the surface, I'm going to say no. I would not.
I know why, too.
Yeah. But
because 3D printing eventually, in theory, should enable you to be able to make a SCAR rifle or a Nambu or a Borchardt pistol. I mean, if you listen to the hype, 50 years from now, 3D printing will be so good you won't even need large firearms companies.
Yep. I
don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't think 3D printing is real. I think 3D printing is like flying cars.
I think you're living in a bubble. 3D printing is the wave of the future.
Sure it is. 3D printing is the wave of the future, just like flying cars are the wave of the future. And it'll be 200 years before 3D printers get good enough that you can actually make real guns with them.
I totally disagree with you. I totally 100%.
Until they figure out how to center this stuff.
I have done.
I hope you're right.
I've done a lot of research on 3D printing, and I don't think you really fully appreciate how 3D printing works. And now, granted, the 3D printers that use the metallic alloys that you would need to make a gun right now are not as sophisticated as they could be, and they're super, super, super expensive. But the truth is, 20 years from now, CNC machines will be like old Bridgeport milling machines. Everyone will be doing 3D printing because that's the wave of the future.
I hope you're right, because if that happens, then we can make anything. And there's some historical guns that we would love to make. But right now, to me, it's the flying car argument. It's like, oh yeah, Buck Rogers are going to be flying in cars and jetpacks. Yeah. And it's like, I do not even see a 3D printer being able to make a barrel that can handle a 338 Lapua chamber, much less a 30-06 chamber.
Yeah. Well, like I said, just
you can't make a gun if you can't make a barrel.
But you can make a barrel with a 3D printer. That's the thing. You can.
For low-powered cartridges, single shots. I've seen the guy. Supposedly, there's a 1911 that they can make with a 3D printer. But let's be real, dude. 45 ACP isn't exactly the top end of the pressure curve.
It's not 10 millimeter or 357 SIG or anything like that. I get that.
Fuck 357.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
but look,
forget these rifles.
It's coming. I mean, it's coming.
It's coming.
And
flying cars are coming too.
Yeah. Once again, 5-6 years from now, we're going to be having this same conversation. You're going to be like, I hate to admit it, but you were right.
That happens a lot.
It does.
That happens. In fairness, I'm always honest. That happens a lot. In 5-6 years from now, I'll be making a John 1911 goddamn gun, and you'll be like, and we'll be fucking making it for people, and you'll be like, I told you, bitch. And you know what? That's fine. And we'll be selling it on the John 1911 app.
Yeah, there you go.
Promoting it on the John 1911 podcast.
Yeah, but, look, regardless, of that, let's get back to the Japanese weapons cache that was found. What I want to know is what they're going to do with those guns, because those guns are all relics. They're not operational. You're not able to make them operational. They're roached. I mean, they're roached. It's like the videos you see on the Russian front of all the relic guns and shit they dig up. These things are toast. I wonder if they're going to destroy them or if they're going to start coming on the market.
In Japan, they will destroy them.
Probably.
They don't play in fucking Japan on guns at all.
Yeah, but
there's no nothing in Japan.
Yeah.
There's a few instances where people can maybe get a license for a hunting shotgun or a hunting rifle, and it is so tightly crazy ass controlled. There's no way. Japan never even surpluses their working shit. That's why, like, you never see the Japanese, the modern, like we got the K2s in the country and the Wolf T91s, and like, there's nothing coming out of Japan.
Well,
nothing. The only guns coming out of Japan are Browning over-under shotguns.
Well, again,
I could be wrong.
I mean, Japan does. I mean, they make the Howler rifle for, and they make the rifle for Weatherby, which is basically the Howler.
Yeah.
That's
the same thing. It's the same thing. There's this one or two companies in Japan. Basically, it's Howa. They make one or two or three guns for the U.S. market for export, and those guns don't even exist in Japan. Like, they don't exist outside the walls of that company.
Yeah. Well, but again, if someone can get the right, if someone can get the right strings pulled, maybe they can snarf up some of these. Yeah.
I think the only Japanese guns you ever see on the collector's market are from World War II that are captured or bringbacks during the war. I
mean, I get that.
But hey, you know what? Maybe one day Prime Minister Abe will come. Maybe he'll come flying over in his flying car with his 3D printed Type 99 light machine gun, and he'll drop it in our laps.
Okay.
And it'll be the future.
Okay. Now, in the '60s, they did import Aerosmith rifles. Pre 1968, there were some that were brought in
from Japan.
Yeah, from Japan. But then again, we still pretty much, I mean, we occupied Japan all the way up into the early '60s.
We still technically occupied Japan. We gave them back. When did we give them back their sovereignty? In the 50s?
Yeah, I think
50s,
late 50s or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it was in the 60s. It was in the maybe 57. I don't know why I'm thinking that 57, 50.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but yeah, maybe they did come in. But I would personally tend to think that our Arisaka rifles that imported from Japan, I would think they came out of the Philippines or Taiwan or maybe out of China.
All the Arisakas you find with the ground mums were defaced by the U.S. government when we occupied Japan because it was
We defaced them. I thought the Japanese defaced them. Well, you know what? That's a good point. We'll wrap up the pod on this. So explain that.
Well, basically, it was the sign of the emperor, and they were defeated, and it was just basically a way to, put our boot on their throat. So we would.
I thought it was the Japanese that defaced them. The idea being, if you had one with a mum, basically it was captured quickly. But if the Japanese knew that they were going to be captured, they went and defaced all this shit. Yeah. That's the way I was always told.
No, that's incorrect. It was all done after the war. Now, I mean, I'm sure the Japanese did the actual defacing. I'm sure they didn't have GIs with grinders,
Do you think it was kind of done like Russian capture to show this gun, we know this gun exists and we've put it into the system? Like, so, like if we take some Arasakas in, then we have to create the Japanese police force. We give them guns that are defaced, so we know we've controlled those guns and they're not guns floating around that we don't know about. Is that it?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we destroyed a lot of the Japanese weaponry. And I was talking to a buddy of mine years ago who served on the USS America, which we just did a article on. You did.
Oh, yeah.
During the Vietnam War. His dad was in the Navy during World War II, and he was in Tokyo Harbor after after the war was over. And he said they would fill like Higgins boats, like landing crafts with weaponry. And he said there's thousands and thousands of rifles and weapons dumped in the bottom of Tokyo Harbor.
That's interesting.
Doesn't
surprise me, but you know what? If you're into that, it's probably, yeah. Because like the Germans did tons of that shit too. Like they would dump shit in the lakes so that people wouldn't capture them.
Yeah.
They were doing stuff like that on their side. It's interesting.
So anyway, and I mean, we could talk for hours on the subject, but anyway, you're probably right. I doubt if we'll see any of these relic machine guns come into the country. It would be super awesome if they did.
It would be.
And even though they're relics and they're roached out, it would still be pretty freaking awesome to have one, because there would be, it'd just be like buying any other relic. There'd be no paperwork on it. It'd just be like, give me your money.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. Maybe we'll have to see what we can do. All right. Well, this wraps up episode 104 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see some links to stories or pictures of the guns we're talking about or things that we've discussed, go to our website, john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. Everybody, have a good day.
See you later.